Welcome to the worst of the best podcast. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't freaking make it! So here's what you get.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Worst of the Best podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and with me today, again, I have another special guest host. People, do not be panicky. My brother, Jason, he is still a part of the show. I've just had some free time recently in the last part of my work schedule where I've been able to get some special guests on and do some recordings with them before I go back with Jason. Today, I have Annie from What's This Game, the YouTube podcast show. Annie, thank you for coming on, and how are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me on. It's nice to be able to branch out and do other people's shows. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you accepting it. It's always tough, I know, to go on somebody else's show. Are they going to be a bag of hammers or disaster? Maybe we'll still be that. But thanks for trusting me enough. I do know you because you are one of the review girls for Who Are These Podcasts. I've seen you and enjoy your banter with Carl and the gang there. And so you've taken some trust coming on my show. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being on their show as well. I was just down in, or I guess up in Detroit this past weekend, and I was invited to come on the stage. So, you know, I guess I'm really officially part of the crew now because I've been up on the live stage show. So thank you, Carl. Thank you, crew. And thank you to the Magic Bag.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I was actually thinking that too, that you're officially a part of the gang if you get to be up on the stage there. Why don't you plug your show? What do you do?
I host a show called What's This Game, which is a video game review podcast. We are about 20 episodes. Well, actually, it'll be 20 episodes tomorrow. We just kind of cover games that I like and that I'm a big fan of, and games that I want to play again, and I need kind of an excuse to. We've covered most recently Prey, which is a game that I really wanted to play again because it's like an immersive sim. So it's a kind of choose your own adventure kind of game. And it was nice to play that. We've covered Minecraft. We've covered turn-based games like XCOM. So it's a nice way to get me to try new games and also for me to get my co-host to try new things, such as Dead Space, which is what we covered last Halloween. My co-host Dylan had never played it. So it gave him an excuse to boot up the old Xbox and try a old 2008 horror game.
Awesome. Yeah. My oldest son played Dead Space back when he was a teenager, and I remember him legitimately being jump scared by that game. Does it hold up?
It's not as scary because obviously we're adults now and, you know,
Sure.
Body horror doesn't affect us as much. And especially if you've played the game before, you kind of know what's going to happen. The scariest parts of the game are just the ship making noise at you, and you'll walk into a bathroom and then suddenly the showers will start blasting and it's just like, oh, okay. It's just
Those
just
type
water.
of jump
I'm okay.
scares. Yeah, sure. The atmospheric part of the
Sometimes
game.
they're
Sure.
cheap, but you know, I think as a game, it still holds up. It's a great combat game. It's a great over-the-shoulder hallway shooter. So
Okay, cool.
it's a good game. You know, as long as you're not just emotionless, the game keeps your adrenaline pumping and it keeps you ready. On my most recent playthrough of the 2023 remake of Dead Space, I played on impossible mode, so I only had like one life. I'm treating the game very differently. I'm very cautious. Anytime I get hit, it actually makes me feel nervous because I'm like, I don't know how many more health packs I have right now because I got hit twice in this fight. And I don't remember, did I just use the small health pack or did I use the medium? So it becomes a little bit more stressful on that. That's something I like about it.
Oh, cool. Well, that's great. There you go, folks. A little taste of how Annie runs her show and some of the analysts of video games, which I'm going to rely on today. Annie, I brought you on today because we are actually talking about some of, not all of, these are the top 10 overrated video games, because I'm sure if you were to get 100 video gamers that are, this is like their real passion, I bet you we get a different top 10 from a lot of different people. But I think these games enough, or the genres that some of these games come from, or their universes that we're going to talk about, I think they're worth talking about. I used Reddit, I used other top 10 lists. So I kind of curated whatever overlapped a lot to create this list. This is the list we're presenting, but please let us know in the comments or emails, or who knows, you can get mad at us for a variety of reasons, maybe what game we missed, or if enough comments even come in, we could even do a part 2. Now, Annie, do you ever get excited hearing about the greatest video games of all time, only to discover they don't quite live up to the hype? Well, you're not alone. Every gamer has likely been caught up in that buzz. They spend their hard-earned money, they unwrap the game with high hopes and start playing only to be feeling a little let down after they play. So we're going to dive in and talk about some of the most overrated video games, and we're going to examine why they may have fell short of expectations and whether they're still worth a play today. Is there a game that's not on this list, obviously, that you can recall of recent that, oh, I'm really looking forward to playing this, and then you played it and you either asked for a Steam refund or you haven't gone back to it for a long, long time? So a high hope game, but you're kind of like, I'm not as excited about playing this game as I thought it'd be.
If there is a game that is in that criteria, I've probably repressed it. It probably was a bad experience, and I was like, I just don't feel like playing this anymore.
I'd been waiting forever for Elden Ring to kind of come down in price. It was a decent drop. So you know what? It's been out long enough. I'm a big single player game. Those are the type of games I play. I very rarely, if ever, play online games. It's usually single player, go in, do one quest, log out. I was like, I'm going to try this game. And I've been looking forward to this, high hopes. People talk about this. It's rated well. I play the game and I'm like, it was a combination of, I don't need a hack and slash. I like games like The Witcher and stuff and Fallout. So those type of single player games. And I was hoping this would be that version of something, but it's too open world. I kind of need a map marker. I kind of like to talk to NPC. I don't mind collecting herbs for your potion. But I also don't mind not being catered to as a gamer to a degree, because I can always just go online. I actually was looking at maps and walkthroughs online at the same time, so I kind of wasn't totally lost. But even after all that, I was like, I'm not really. Yeah, there's some gorgeous graphics and big bosses, but I was like, yeah, I wasn't thrilled by the game. That was a big, and I got my money back. I'm not feeling it, so that was my most recent letdown.
I guess to answer your question, it would probably have been Starfield. I was pretty excited for that game. I knew it wouldn't be what it was being hyped up for. I knew it wouldn't be super incredible, but I was expecting at least something decent. I will give it the caveat that I was playing it on underpowered PC hardware at the time, so it was struggling to play the game, and maybe it didn't look and function as well as it should have. But I felt like it was just another copy-paste Bethesda game. They just like, yep, here's this model. This model is going to say these sentences, and that's about all it does. You can't kill this model because it's involved in a quest 10 years later in the story, so, well, that's about it. It's a classic Bethesda game. I didn't get too far in the story, but I was overwhelmingly disappointed with the beginning of it.
Fair enough, and I get you. It was frustrating. I played it, so I got the bug fixes, the mods, whatever it was, and it runs really great on my computer. I finished it. I actually enjoyed it. It felt familiar. I'm a big Bethesda fan. I've played a lot of their games. It felt familiar. Yeah, it didn't break new ground. I get it. It felt cookie cutters in that sense, but I was okay with it. The cookie tastes good. I actually did finish it. Started to do the replay, but the replay was I just finished it. It's the same. The replay value was very low for me. So, but I finished it and I've moved on. I haven't looked back. So let's start with number 10, shall we? Number 10, Fortnite. If you can believe it, this game was launched in 2017 and it took the world by storm. It offered a distinctive battle royale experience that combined shooting, building, and survival. It's had frequent updates to keep things fresh and a collection of quirky dance moves. My kids love this game because of those things, and it's no surprise the game has become a cultural icon even today. But here's the catch. Some players feel like after a while, Fortnite, the core gameplay starts to feel repetitive. The initial excitement fades and the loop becomes monotonous. The much touted building mechanics, they can be more frustrating than fun, often resulting in encounters where players throw up massive structures to dominate opponents. I've seen my 10-year-old son do this, and he's been playing Fortnite for 3 to 5 years. Like, he's probably been killing adults at the age of 5 when he started. But I see him button mash and stuff, and I can't believe how fast he can build these stairs. I don't even know how they do it. But on top of that, many of the updates lean heavily on cosmetic enhancements rather than gameplay improvements or balancing fixes. So while your character might look impressive, the gameplay often remains imbalanced and frustrating. All things considered, Fortnite does make our list as an overrated experience.
The short of it is, I think the game is kind of what you make of it. If you're going in with a try-hard battle royale, you're probably going to end up getting beaten by little kids who know the map and know all of the right things to do and the secret powers or whatever the season holds. You're probably going to get crushed, especially if you go into rank. It is a tough game. But if you go into it just having fun and trying to play with your friends and just enjoying, using it as a vehicle to hang out with people, I've had tons of fun with it. I started playing it, I think in 2020, briefly, and then I quit for a bunch of years and picked it back up at the beginning of summer this year. played with a couple of people from the Tukey Soup Discord, and we just enjoyed the season. The season that we picked up was supposed to be a Mad Max season, but the license fell through. So they still had all the assets and all the plan and all the theming.
Right. Yeah.
So the island was still covered in desert, and it was heavily focused on modding vehicles and driving around and shooting them. And there was bunkers about and stuff like that. So it was very clearly inspired by Mad Max, but they didn't get the license. So like, quick, change the characters.
Fine.
But it was a lot of fun. Now this season, it's focused heavily on Marvel. So you got like Iron Man gear, you have Doctor Doom gauntlets. There's just a bunch of Marvel things going on. There's tons of updates. And I feel like maybe years and years ago, they didn't have feel like they had a big enough roadmap. So now whenever they put out an update, which is kind of like every 2 weeks, it really changes things up. The most recent update was bringing back the Fortnite Mares, which is their Halloween event. They changed a couple parts of the map, which were already changed just recently because of the Doctor Doom stuff. So now you got pumpkins all over the place. You have grind rails, which change up how movement works in those zones. And they added a really powerful melee weapon, which is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre chainsaw, where you can kill people in a couple of hits with the chainsaw. It really mixes up the gameplay. There are two big modes in Fortnite. Two big modes is builds, where you can, as you mentioned, just throw up a big structure and dominate by building a tower or crushing enemy structures, or just being able to outmaneuver by having such fast fingers that you can throw up these structures in a matter of seconds. Or the alternate mode, which is zero build, where nobody can build anything. The only buildables are things that you can throw on the ground, like a porta bunker or bouncy pads or literal items. I primarily play the zero builds because I don't have that dog in me anymore to have that many actions per minute. I'm just like, it's fine. And I'd rather not cheat. Like, I'm sure I could just program my keyboard, make a macro where I could just press a button and it'll be like, okay, I built the thing.
Oh.
But I'm sure that's against the terms of services somewhere, and I'm sure that'd be classified as cheating or botting. So I'd rather just play the zero build mode. To answer whether it's overrated or not, probably. I feel like its biggest game mode is the Battle Royale, and it is the same thing over and over and over. And even if they update it every 2 weeks, you're still going in with the same objective. Grab some items, maybe do a quest or two, and hopefully you don't die before the top circle. It does have tons of creator modes and alternate modes in it. There's like racing, there's a Lego mode, there's now a first person camera, so people are making like body cam and like horror games. So the game is very broad, and if you're going into it just to do one thing, you're probably going to get bored of it and you're going to have a tired time. But if you're willing to explore it with your friends, then you could see a game where it's like sniper one-shot kills, or you could have jetpack only modes or platforming, or there's so much to it. You would be pressed to actually get bored with it, I think.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, I've played it a little bit. I'm not very good at those type of shooter games or really online games. Like I said before, I usually, when I enter the game, I get killed right away. One of those that will come into play later with another one of these games. To me, it's a young kid sport. I see my kids play it. I assume they're playing with a lot of younger kids. The skins seem to be for younger people as well. You know, it gears towards children. I say children because I'm an old adult, but maybe
it's very cartoony. It's colorful. It's fluffy. It's silly.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Well, kind of going to that same type of younger audience, but I know adults play this one too. It's been around for a while. We're going to go with number 9's Minecraft. It's been around, if you can believe it, already for over a decade. It's obviously a massive hit, especially among younger players. It has a sandbox gameplay, allowing users to explore, build, and create virtually anything they can imagine. The developers delivered on their promise of a vast open world with endless possibilities, but is all the hype it justified? While the game's open-ended world offers plenty of creative freedom, it can start to feel dull after a while. Sure, you can construct anything out of blocks, but to what end? The absence of a story or concrete objectives often leaves players feeling directionless. The survival mode does introduce some excitement and challenge, but it too can feel repetitive over time. And then there's the game's distinctive graphics. Although some find the blocky style charming, others miss a more realistic, which can be off-putting. So while Minecraft has certainly evolved with updates over the years, these changes don't always add significantly gameplay depth or new features. Despite the game's boundless potential, it may lack the lasting appeal to keep everyone hooked. Again, I'll use my kids as an example. They don't play it as much as they used to, but back when they did play it, it was really neat to see some of the stuff they build. To me, it's always been a version of Lego. I've always just viewed it as Lego. You're interacting with your Lego pieces, essentially, is how I've always looked at it. And I do admit the idea that there's really no end game or purpose to the game. I'm not a sandbox person. I know there are sandbox people out there, and that's why it's called a sandbox. Here's your sand, build your own castle. People really enjoy that type of gameplay, and I appreciate there's an audience for that.
I'm actually a big fan of Minecraft overall.
Okay.
I actually have 2 Minecraft posters. There's the one here, and then there's one back there that you can't actually see on camera. I think Minecraft is kind of like a masterpiece. There is nothing but creative freedom in that game. And as you mentioned, because of that, it can feel aimless. In the clip that you're playing right now, you can just see the default character, his name is Steve, just walking around in a lonely world, just placing blocks and slowly building up, but there's nothing else. There is hardly a thing. The entire world is kind of empty. Now, this is a very early version of Minecraft where you didn't have hundreds of different creatures and you've got different wildlife. And now you can see on screen that you're playing with players, which is really where Minecraft kind of shines. Minecraft is a community game. If you want to play it alone, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you can explore a world and build it up as long as you want and, you know, just be proud of your accomplishments in exploring and doing whatever you want. But whenever you explore and build with friends, it constantly has moments that just create memories. Going into a cave and you're digging along and suddenly you fall into a pile of lava and lose everything you've been fighting for hours. Yeah, that can be devastating, but you'll remember that. And next time you're going through the cave, whenever you have this whole wall built off or blocked off with wood, you'll be like, oh, hey, why is that blocked off? Don't go back there. There's nothing but hell back there. And it just creates this sort of lived-in feeling that you slowly carve out the world. And that's where Minecraft really shines, is just being able to look back at everything you've accomplished and just be proud of what you've done. Because, as you said, there is no real point to Minecraft. There is a sort of like final boss.
There's like a dragon or something in the sky. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yes, the Ender Dragon is sort of the end of the game, where you go to a dungeon, you beat the dungeon, and then you build a portal, and you go to an alternate dimension, you do some things there, and you finally kill the dragon, and then, yeah, the credits roll. But after that, the game keeps going. It's not really the end of the game. I mean, yeah, you beat the dragon, you got the credits rolling, but the world doesn't stop. It keeps going. You can put the game away and never play it again, or you can start up a new world, or you can hop out of the end dimension and just go back with your life. Like I said, Minecraft is just how much you want to put into it and how much you want to get out of it. It's a farming simulator. Like, yeah, it's nothing hugely deep. It really isn't. Right. It's just, here we generated a world for you. You can explore. These are where these resources are located, and these are how these resources interact with those ones. Have fun. It's a sandbox. You get to do what you want. If you're not that type of gamer, it's going to feel soulless. It's going to feel like you're just walking around like, okay, cool, I cut down the wood. Now, okay, now I need to build a diamond sword. What do I build a diamond sword for? Okay, so I can kill an enemy in less hits, but why do I want to kill the enemy? What do I need skeleton bones for? Like, if you don't care, it's just going to be a bunch of eye rolling and being like, okay. So
it's a great game for, obviously, creative types, people that can form their own worlds in their minds and put it out there. And I've seen my kids have done some incredible builds I've seen over the years. And I've seen, obviously, like, Harry Potter worlds, and I can't believe what some of these people have put in, like thousands of hours of builds. You go on YouTube, of course, you'll see a myriad of examples of incredible, beautiful worlds that people have built out of blocks. It's amazing, but that's almost like I say, it's artwork. It's almost an artistry that my brain does not have that DNA. I need the world created for me. I'm not a game developer. Okay, I have to play the game developed.
The other side of that, if you're in a community of, like, I don't know, we'll say 8 or 10 people playing Minecraft, and you're all making a village together. If you're not a person that's very creative, or you don't feel like going and running out into the wilderness and hunting wolves or doing whatever, you could be that person that just stays in town and organizes chests or makes signs or builds another deck, or, there are so many things to do if you give yourself a list, but you have to be detail oriented. You have to want to do that thing. So
I've said I got enough chores in real life. I got to rake the leaves after this. Like, I don't need to rake the leaves in Minecraft. I got to do it in real life. Okay, awesome. No, I love that. All right, the Call of Duty franchise is the next one we're going to talk about. Specifically, though, we're going to talk about the entry of the Infinite Warfare game that launched in 2016 and the anticipation for this one. So this is part of the overrated quality that we're adding to this list, Annie, is that these are games that have been played and talked about over time. They have their own legacies, and then some of these games within these universes were particularly anticipation was high, I should say. So this one was a sky high for this one. 2016, the game promised a captivating single-player campaign, thrilling multiplayer experiences, cutting-edge visuals, and fresh gameplay mechanics. Apparently, this from my research, it fell short in several key areas. The single-player campaign turned out to be largely forgettable, with a story that struggled to engage audiences. The multiplayer mode was similarly disappointing, lacking the innovation fans had hoped for. And one of the game's most hyped features was space combat. Even this edition felt underwhelming and somewhat forced. The futuristic setting and advanced weaponry, rather than feeling exciting, came across as overused and cliched, lacking the gritty realism that Call of Duty fans had come to love previously. So despite the flashy visuals, the gameplay mechanics didn't satisfy, leaving players with a hollow experience. So in the end, Infinite Warfare was a heavily marketed title that failed to live up to expectations, ultimately becoming a forgettable entry in the Call of Duty series.
The last game in the franchise that I really, really dug into and actually played was probably Black Ops 1. I played a bunch of Black Ops 2, but I never owned my own copy. I would play on like at friends' houses or with them on their games or, whatever. The last one I played in the series really was Black Ops. So that was years and years ago. I do remember this game being advertised pretty heavily, and I believe because of the big flop of its release and the fact that head scratching to some players, just being like, what is this pivot that we're going with? Why is my gritty, realistic shooter now suddenly like flying around in spaceships? And why do I have a jetpack now? And why do I have like superpowers in the next game? And this game kind of changed the pacing of the franchise, and especially the marketing, because I don't really remember a game being marketed after this game. It was just kind of like, hey, Call of Duty's coming out this at the end of this year. You getting it? And it's like, okay, well, I got last year's one. I guess I'm getting this one. But I don't really remember seeing many marketing pushes up until the Call of Duty recently, I think it was Vanguard, that was like the World War II focused one. I feel like there was a big gap in the marketing after this game because they're like, okay, well, maybe we don't know how to sell to other people. We're just going to keep making Call of Duties to sell to our Call of Duty people.
Yeah, this is a franchise series. What's the other one that's like this one? Call of Duty.
Battlefield?
Thank you. I get them like a cheap deal on Steam or whatever it is. That's like $9.99 or $5.99. Fine, I'll try it out. I'll go online. I'll literally like port into an area, start the game. Like I'm like dead. I'm like, oh, can I move? I can't even breathe. So I don't like the online player. I just get pwned, as the kids say, right away. And then the campaigns, I thought, okay, I'll just try the campaigns. But I find a lot of these Battlefield and Call of Duty campaigns, I've played a few of them, just the single player campaign modes. I find them to be, I don't know, a little bit stagnant, stale. I'm a big role player. Like I like the role playing games again, like Fallout. Even Starfield. I like those type of storylines to choose, and I like to choose my choices. I like to be a bit of a dick or whatever it is, or maybe be the good guy or whatever it is. I find in these campaigns, I'm not a big fan of this linear, like you got to go this way, rush that battlefield, take that building, kick down the door. It's just not my style of gaming. Obviously, it is a style of gaming for millions of people, so I totally appreciate the success the series has. But this was a particular entry in the series that was heavily touted and excited, but I think expectations were not met necessarily with this one. I will say this too about first-person shooters, but I'm an older timer gamer too. I played Counter-Strike back when it first came out. I loved that game. So that was like 2005. I was playing that. It's very quaint to think about it nowadays. But I played Counter-Strike with my buddies, and it was like LAN or whatever. Or it was the internet, I should say. It was my neighbor I played with, and I really had a lot of fun with that. But the game's got like Call of Duty and Battlefield now. It's the same type of mechanics of Counter-Strike, but it's so big now and so overwhelming. I admit that it's like a young man's game now. I feel like I got left in the dust as an old man.
I've never really appreciated the Call of Duty franchise just because of its ridiculously fast time to kill.
Yeah, fair.
You, in most situations, die in under 1 second.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of times where a combat situation lasts 3, 5, 10, 15 seconds unless you're already running and the enemy has to chase you and they missed and they didn't just kill you right by shooting you in the back or, throwing a knife at you. It's a lot of quick combat situations, and even if you're really good at the game, you can still die in just 1 second because of a mistake or you didn't see something or
lucky headshot from somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, a lucky headshot, because you're playing on hardcore or whatever, and a headshot will always kill you no matter what. It is just a little bit too quick for me for a shooter where I'm playing against players. If I was just fighting a bunch of AI, I don't mind dying that fast. I don't mind where I kill them that quickly, because for me, then it becomes like a puzzle where I have to solve it, or I have to pick who to shoot first. I have to make sure not to get hit. It becomes more of a thinking game than running around and twitching and being like, okay, is that clear? Is that clear? I've always sort of preferred Halo because you have the shields, which give you time to react and turn around. You have radar, which is also pointing you in the direction of the enemy at all times. So there's a lot more situational awareness, which allows you to react. Like, even if an enemy runs up and punches you in the face, they don't kill you in one hit. In most situations, it'll just break your shield, and then they have to punch you again to kill you, which gives you time to either punch them and shoot them in the head, or it gives you time to react. Whereas in Call of Duty, if a guy runs up and knifes you, you're dead.
Put this list a little bit out of order because you brought up Halo. So let's just go to Halo now. We'll go back to the other number. These are, I should say, these are just numbered. There's no ranking here. I say number 10, number 7, number 6. There's no like worst or best in this list. It's just that you can only read things in an order. so
sure,
let's just go to, so let's go to Halo right now then, since you brought it up. So back in the day, Halo Combat Evolved, as it was called, delivered an engaging single-player campaign with a challenging story that kept players hooked, along with a multiplayer mode packed with addictive gameplay and unique weaponry that kept matches feeling fresh. However, by today's standards, some aspects of the game feel a bit dated. The shooting mechanics can come across as clunky. The AI that you're talking about isn't as sharp as one might hope. And the graphics, which is, I get it, but they have not aged gracefully, which may disappoint players used to modern high-definition visuals. The story, while captivating, can also feel somewhat one-dimensional. The depiction of the alien covenant has been criticized for its simplicity and lack of nuanced development, and female characters are noticeably underrepresented. Despite its groundbreaking impact at release, Halo Combat Evolved doesn't quite shine the way it once did. So this is an example of a game that may have been great at the time, but we're also talking about with this list, overrated can mean, is it still replayable today? So nonetheless, it does remain an enjoyable and nostalgic experience for longtime fans. So you did bring up Halo. Do you recall, or did you play Halo Combat Evolved at the time? Evolved at the time, and is this a game that you enjoy even today?
So I'll just preface this by saying I am heavily biased towards Halo as a series. Sure. It's my all-time favorite IP, intellectual property. So it's just a quick way to say like franchise, I guess.
Okay. Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah.
I love Halo, and it's really what kind of turned me into a gamer. Like, I was already liking games, and I was playing Nintendo with my family, and I would, just kind of enjoy whatever games were available. But it wasn't until my friend invited me over to play Halo that I was like, whoa, this is cool. I can look in two directions. I can move and look, and I can... My mind was blown just by the control scheme alone. And then once I started realizing that there was a cool story and there was cool aliens to shoot, plenty of guns. Oh, and there's vehicles. Oh, and there's player versus player modes. Wow, this game's got it all. And you can bring over somebody else's Xbox and play on two TVs at once. Wow, this game is the future. Yes, I played Halo Combat Evolved a ton. It really shaped me into the gamer that I am today. And I got Halo posters all over this room. I got 2 up there, and I've got 1 over here. So I'm a big fan of the series in general. But that aside, I will say that Halo 1 sucks.
Really? Okay, why?
everything you said, it's clunky. The AI is advanced for the time, but like if you play any of the Halo games after Halo 1, you're like, oh, okay, these AIs are idiots. They got like 2 moves, they have 2 plans of attack. The grunts are completely worthless unless they throw a grenade. If you dissect Halo 1, it's very boring too. If you skip the cutscenes in Halo 1, the game also makes very little sense. You are on a ship, then suddenly you're on the ground, and then suddenly you're in like a canyon, and then suddenly you're in inside of a building, and then now you're in the winter, and then now you're in the swamp, and it's just like,
all right,
are these just set pieces? Yes, sort of. But there's a big story going on, and if you aren't paying attention to it, Halo 1 is just, ooh, look at this sci-fi shooter, let me shoot these aliens, let me grab that gun, and there's nothing really happening. There's not a lot of environmental storytelling. There's a couple of places where you'll see like a Marine dead and you'll wonder who killed them and why there's a bunch of gear there. But it's really because the developers said, oh, we need to put some power-ups here and that we don't want them to just be sitting here. I guess somebody was carrying it or something. The game is a product of its time, though. The game went through a lot of developmental struggles and was initially going to be on the Macintosh. They couldn't really sell it, and it was going to be like a real-time strategy where it's like a top-down, you're like moving armies and stuff. The game went through a lot of rewrites and redevelops to be what we know it as today. It really pioneered first-person shooters. It is groundbreaking, but going back to playing it after playing any modern game where you have like sprinting, sliding, you can climb up on things, it is a very clunky and old game. It doesn't have a lot of fun set pieces. The Pillar of Autumn you fight on twice in the game. The assault on the control room is used twice in the game. There's places that are just used multiple times, and it really takes away from the game. Yeah, sure, you're just backtracking, I guess, and it kind of makes sense, but it feels limited because they're just reusing assets over and over and you're just doing the same thing. And I'm repeating myself, but the point of Halo 1 is to kind of introduce you to the universe. If you're going to go into Halo fresh, you should still probably start with that or Reach. But if you start with Reach, then you're going to play Halo 1 and you're going to be, oh god, this is so clunky and slow.
Sure.
Why does this feel like this? Yeah. It's a necessary evil.
If you're a purist, you start with the first one without playing any of the other ones, just so you're not comparing the first. It only gets better, as you're saying. Don't go back.
Yeah, don't try to go back and play Halo 1 if you don't feel like you need to. Watch the cutscenes, maybe watch somebody else play it. I don't know. To me, not very fun anymore. Halo 1 is very clunky, very old.
All right. Well, this is going to be interesting. I don't want you to obviously reveal any kind of worst picks. Or you started off strong with that one. I was about to say during your beginning part, I was going to say, wow, that won't be your worst pick. But now I don't know. We'll stand by for the end of this episode. Okay. All right. Well, you probably have heard of this one, folks. I know, Annie, you have. And this is a game I've played. Grand Theft Auto 5. It hit the scene with promises of a sprawling open world packed with unique characters and captivating storylines. And in many ways, it delivered. The game's world is undeniably vast and detailed, offering countless activities and discoveries for players. However, the story can feel uneven, with some characters that are engaging and well-developed, and others come off as flat or stereotypical. The game's tone also fluctuates, with moments of humor that can feel out of place amidst serious themes like drug trafficking and organized crime. Mechanically, the game has its highs and lows. While impressive in many respects, driving, which I cannot freaking stand. I'll tell you this. All these games like Grand Theft Auto and games like it, I admit, I suck at the driving. I cannot handle vehicles. There's one game I'm playing that I love. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. I'm doing a slow play of it, but I'm actually really loving the game, and I bought the expansion, so I have the whole game, is Cyberpunk. I love that game. And the reason why I love that game, because it looks beautiful. It started off really bad, but here's some developers where they heard they really fixed the game. So I was one of the people that waited, and I waited till all the fixes were done. So I've got the ultimate game. I got the updated version with the expansion.
I haven't played Cyberpunk until this year, so it's the same with me. I waited until like everything was done. They're like, okay, we released our big DLC. We put in the 1.2 patch on it, so it's fixed. It's ready to go. And it looks good. And I'm like, okay, cool. So before I even start the game, I'm also going to heavily mod it. So I put in like 700 mods. And I'm like, okay, I am ready to experience this game the way it was intended. Yeah. And to your point, I do like the driving, but it does feel a little arcadey. It doesn't feel like Forza, there's a lot of driving mechanics, there's controls, there's feedback. In Grand Theft Auto, it tries to do that. In Saints Row, there's like a lot of vibration feedback on it. Yeah. The driving in Cyberpunk is really good, but it's just kind of simplified. And I think that's why it's good.
That's what I needed. That's what I love about Cyberpunk. So I love the game. I think it's fantastic. Great acting, great graphic. Of course, Keanu Reeves' voice acting and his character looks like him in the game. It's just fun.
But to pivot back to GTA, yeah, the driving is a little slidey. It's hard. The vehicles are weighted too much. There's too much traction. So yeah, it really takes away from the enjoyment of the game if you don't like the driving, because that's a big portion of the game.
It's a big portion.
Auto.
You gotta. I know. But I love the side. So the side. I wish there was a way you could play Grand Theft Auto, just called Grand Theft, like walking. I like the other side quests and stuff that you get to do, the mugging or the robbing or whatever, the shootouts and stuff. But there's also the online multiplayer mode that kind of came with this game. It was very ambitious at the time, but it was often hampered by bugs and glitches, making for a frustrating experience. And moreover. And cheaters, you're absolutely right. Moreover, Grand Theft Auto 5 has faced criticism. Remember, people, I'm just reporting the news. I'm not necessarily one of these people. Like, I'm going to read stuff on these reviews and things I've gleaned from other sites and stuff, why these games have been criticized or been seemed as overrated or criticized. Don't at me, at the people. I'm just reporting the news. So, Grand Theft Auto, but it has indeed faced criticism for its portrayal of women and minorities, which some players see as sexist and racially insensitive. While the game's satirical angle aims to critique societal issues, it can sometimes, according to players feel offensive all the same rather than insightful. Ultimately, Grand Theft Auto 5 offers a massive open world with plenty to explore, but this alone might not be enough to cement its status as one of the greatest games ever.
It initially came out in 2013, as you mentioned. That was a decade ago. It came out on the old gen hardware twice ago. So it came out on the 360. Surprisingly, it did pretty well. Like it functioned well. It looked pretty good. Then it got a remaster for the next series, or the next line, I guess, which was like the PS4 and the Xbox One. It added a bunch, and it felt like, oh wow, this is like a real 2.0 version of this game. It actually feels and looks good. And then years later, once it was fully out on PC, it runs and looks even better on there. The game is nothing but gorgeous. However, underneath all of that beautiful, beautiful paint, it's a very clunky Rockstar game. If you play the game for 10 minutes, you'll feel what I mean. It's hard to see it, but once you play it, you will feel it. The character moves a little weird. The jumping only has like 1 or 2 animations. You always do the same climb. You only can move at so much speed. If you're playing with default control setup, you have to mash the button instead of just holding it. It's awkward. Getting into vehicles is weird because the vehicles have so much weight. They sometimes are over torqued. You have to get used to each different model of vehicle. They try to make it overly realistic, while it sometimes falls flat on all of those features because it's still like a very clunky arcadey game. If you jump out of a car, you should theoretically just die instantly, but because it's a video game, they like make you ragdoll and you go like, and it's silly, and that's kind of the point of GTA, but it feels like sometimes it doesn't know which tone it wants to go with, whether it wants to be really serious and like an adult theme while being satirical, or it just wants to be like literally a silly game where you're like shooting clowns in the parking lot while high on weed. I get it can be both, but sometimes it shouldn't be both at the same time. That sometimes takes away from Grand Theft Auto 5. It has a great story overall, and I feel like it it really innovated with the ability to have 3 protagonists. Once you unlock all of them, you can kind of be any of them at any time. You can beat the story in kind of any order you want. You can do side quests when they come up, or you can be like, I don't like Franklin, I'm just not going to play as him. And only be Franklin when you have to progress the story. But in that case, it still does feel forced. It feels like there isn't a lot of freedom, even though there kind of is. In Grand Theft Auto 4, you were literally limited at the beginning of the game on which islands you could go to. Whether, like, if you crossed the bridge, you would be given like a 6-star wanted level, and everybody would be trying to kill you constantly. You couldn't really go play on those islands. So it's nice that Grand Theft Auto 5 is a lot more open, but until the end of the game, there's not really a lot to do. You have to unlock the side quests. You have to find all these people. Some of them are random encounters. None of that was ever expanded after the release on the 360. Whatever is in the game is in the game. I think the only thing they updated for the campaign is like a couple of cars and then maybe new radio stations, but they never gave you new missions. There's no DLC. There's nothing to expand the single player experience. And because of that, it's a detriment to it as a whole. If you went back and played it, yeah, you could enjoy like a 60, maybe even 80-hour campaign out of it. But after that, you're like, okay, well, I did 100% the game. There's no point to play this again. I've beaten it. The online does provide a huge extra story, but if you aren't willing to cheat and just give yourself like infinite money, the game is a huge grind fest because it's a online game filled with microtransactions, which you can buy money in game, and the game constantly encourages you to because, oh, hey, you want that new apartment? Cool. It's $10 million. How much is $10 million? Well, it's like $50 in real life, maybe a little bit more, like you could just buy that, or you could just grind for 4 weeks and, get that money in game. Oh, you want a second job? Go ahead and go just play this fucking deathmatch playlist over and over and over and over. Oh, now you can't play it because there's cheaters in the lobby and now you're just getting killed every 2 seconds and you only made $10 in that match and it took 30 minutes. So now you're just wasting time too. The online is very fun if you aren't in a lobby that is just being griefed constantly, and if you have people to play it with. If you're willing to cheat and you just give yourself like immortality and give yourself some bank, like a bunch of bank money, the game is a lot of fun because the online has a really good story. It takes place after the campaign of GTA 5. It takes place like 6 months afterwards, so the events of the campaign affect the online story, and the online story is continuous. So things that happened back in 2017 are still referenced because that did actually happen that many years ago in the online story. Whenever you met this character 10 years ago, that's how long the relationship has been online. And I think that's a really cool way because it makes it feel living. The problem is you have to deal with so much crap to actually get to anything enjoyable. And I don't feel like that is a very rewarding experience for your players when you're constantly asking for money during that.
Oh, wow. Great analysis. Thank you. And I've always wondered what the connection was with the online. I've played the game. I never finished it. I couldn't get past a lot of the driving, so I turned it off. I enjoyed it for the time that it came out. I haven't touched it, obviously, in probably 8 years, of course, but the online part of it, I didn't even hear back then. It's a war zone. It's too chaotic. So the same year that Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, if you can believe it, The Last of Us came out. This game made a huge impact when it was launched in 2013. It had emotional storytelling and intense gameplay set in a haunting post-apocalyptic world. The narrative was indeed heart-wrenching. The gameplay delivered a challenging, immersive experience. However, many players have noted that the game's mechanics can feel repetitive, with little variation in the combat and exploration as the story progresses. A more significant critique, though, is the lack, and again, this is what people have reported online, is the lack of diversity among the cast. The main protagonist, Joel, is a white male, and many supporting characters follow suit, with portrayals of people of color and LGBTQ plus characters criticized as lacking depth and sometimes relying on stereotypes. Interestingly, though, the recent HBO Max adaptation has received praise for addressing this gap by expanding the story and introducing more nuanced portrayals and adding layers of representation that were somewhat missing from the original game. And I would just say there, folks, it's signs of the times. I know 2013 seems like yesterday. It was 11 years ago. There's been great changes made with this, understanding and allowing different backgrounds and portrayals of people in shows. And I'm all for it as long as we get into this area, and I'm sure you can agree, where it's like, are we doing this just because, or does it help the story? Is all of a sudden we have like Yoda's gay for some reason? Like, why is he gay all of a sudden? Like, we get it, like it's okay to have, but why did you just happen to make Yoda gay in the new series or whatever it is? So the point is, absolutely have this representation. As long as the story's good, I think people don't care. I think that's always at the end of the day. Is the story good? Great. Gay, black, white, Asian, I personally don't care as long as the story's good. In fact, I've seen that show and it is good. I've seen that representation in the HBO show, and yeah, it's great. It's a great story, great acting by all the characters involved. Thoughts on this? Given those factors, The Last of Us may best serve as a nostalgic experience or for fans rather than a must-play for new gamers. So that's an interesting approach, because The Last of Us is a type of game where, and I've played games like this one. I haven't played this one yet, but I've seen the show. It's a great show. I know season 2 is coming out. I think the criticism of combat, I don't know if that should be a criticism, because this is more of an immersive story. I think the combat is just a way of you kind of doing something while you get to the next scene. This is where you don't skip the cutscenes. The cutscenes is the game.
I've not personally played The Last of Us,
Okay.
unfortunately, because at the time I didn't own a PlayStation, and I still have never owned a PlayStation. Unless I get it on PC, which I believe it finally has a port.
It is on PC. I believe it is on PC and on Steam. I saw, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll have to pick it up and eventually get it, and I'd love to play it
Yeah.
for my show. I am very familiar with the first game's story, and I am very familiar with the HBO series because I watched that as it was coming out. I am a huge fan of this story because at its core, it's a man who lost everything and then accidentally found the thing that he lost and is willing to do anything to protect it, even accidentally destroy it. Even more simply than that, it's a man who finds a new daughter. He just wants to find some old bit of his life back, and it's really touching because Joel is a good dude underneath a lot of dirt. The story takes him to some places that not a lot of other people could go, and he has to make some choices that are hard. And the game is these cutscenes. It is the relationship between Joel and Ellie. That is the game. Walking around, occasionally shooting zombies, sneaking past, and fighting some people is just flavor on it. The combat does seem a little bit boring if you're playing on the easier difficulties. Some people's reviews I've heard, if you play on the hardest difficulty where enemies die in just a couple hits and you die fast as hell, it adds a layer of depth to the game because you have to make split-second decisions. You have to adapt constantly because you're running out of this, you're running out of that. You have to use different methods that you probably normally wouldn't. Sometimes maybe avoiding situations altogether. It is a fantastic story, and the HBO Max show did a really good job of telling it. The only critique I have for the show is episode 4. Episode 4 is a flashback episode to Ellie and her friend back in the mall, which is apparently one of the DLCs for the first game. If you're going to watch the show, my opinion is don't not watch episode 4, but either watch it before you watch everything or just watch it at the end of the show. Watch 1, 2, 3, go to 5, watch the rest of them, and then watch episode 4 at the end because it's DLC. It's a flashback. It's extra flavoring. It's telling you Ellie's story, which is great, but it really breaks up the flow of the show because the pacing of the show is so good. And then suddenly for one whole episode, Joel isn't in it and it's not in the current timeline. It's just somewhere else. And that could be fine for a game, but in the show, I really feel like it breaks up the pacing, which can be negative, but this isn't about the show.
That's great. I like it though.
In the game, you can do the DLC whenever you want. It's kind of the same idea.
Great advice.
You should be able to watch episode 4 whenever you want because it's supplementary, it's a bonus, it's extra. You shouldn't be railroaded in the middle of walking down, fighting zombies, or helping Ellie on a door through a flooded street because she can't swim, and then she climbs up a ladder, and then suddenly you're in the past in a mall. It just hits you out of nowhere.
Oh, that's great. No, that's a fantastic advice, I think. So that's actually a really cool way of looking at that. That they did the download content, as you say, within the show, but go ahead and watch it before or after. Not with the main gameplay, as you say. So that's cool. I like that. Good advice. Right. This next one, Annie, is one I've played. I played a lot of it a while ago. I haven't done it in a while. My two oldest sons, they are big time players of this. They still play together. They're both adults now, and they play together as brothers and with their wives as well, actually. World of Warcraft. So few games have amassed a fan base as loyal as World of Warcraft. With over 15 years under its belt, it has drawn in millions of players worldwide. But has it been idolized beyond reasons, perhaps?
This year's its 20-year anniversary, actually, I believe. Yeah, I think it came out in 2004. I think in September of 2004.
20 years, boy, oh boy. The expansive world is rich with detail, offering endless quests, of course, activities, and a combat system that, while simple, is deeply satisfying. Customization and options allow for diverse character creation, and the WoW community is known for being friendly and supportive, with players often forming lasting friendships. However, some do argue that progression in WoW is too dependent on how much time or money players are willing to sink into it. This can create a rift within the community, separating those who are prepared to grind or pay for in-game advantages from those who aren't. Additionally, the end-game content can feel overwhelming for newcomers. Advancing often requires group play, making it tough for solo players to fully enjoy what the game offers. Still, for those willing to invest the time and effort, World of Warcraft delivers a deep and rewarding MMORPG experience, albeit one that might be overhyped. This is why I do a lot of solo gaming, like, again, Witcher, the Fallout series. What am I doing right now? I just finished Starfield, like Red Dead Redemption games. In fact, Red Dead Redemption, the remake, is coming out today at the time of this recording. Yeah, for the PC Portal, like they redid the first game.
Ooh,
yeah.
okay.
This is where I had a hard time with WoW, because I admit I'm not a big fan of group play or having to organize. I'm busy. I've got a job. I got kids. It's hard for me just like to correlate these real life raids and parties. I just want to go quest, play a game. And so I'm a bit of that grinder, but it takes too long. Like you have to play for 7 to 8 hours to really go anywhere, do anything. You can't just do a quest and come back to it. There is no end game with Warcraft. There are, just when you think you've reached quote unquote the end, they release a new expansion, and it's crack, right? That's what they do. That's why I like games like Fallout or Red Dead Redemption, for example. The game ends and you can move on. You've finished it. You complete. You can do a replay, sure, maybe, but all in all, you got to the end game. The story's ended, but wow, they get you. It is freaking crack. They know how to keep players in. And look, it's working. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I got out. I'm plugged from the Matrix, because it can be a dangerous thing to enter.
I think WoW is a fantastic game, and it is set in a great universe. There's a reason why it's running for 20 years. There's a reason why people confuse it for the oldest MMO. There's a reason it has so much notoriety, because it is a wonderful and literally fantastical world. There is so much lore happening on the planet, as well as in other dimensions. There's gods and demons fighting. There's so much going on that you just being like a random little hero is kind of cool, that you play a big part in all of this. The game is way, way bigger than you. You can't really, not in any meaningful way, play the game alone.
Right, yeah.
You might not be able to play it with anybody you know in real life or anything, or like on Discord or whatever, but you can only get so far in World of Warcraft without joining a guild or having teammates or people to go to dungeons with, or well, I mean, I guess you can quick play in dungeons, but for the like end game content, like you said, you have to organize it. You have to get ready with people, and some of these raids take like 40, 80 people. How are you going to do a raid by yourself when you need 80 people to kill one guy? You can't. Sorry. So if you're going to try to play World of Warcraft alone, as you do with, these other big role-playing games, you're only going to get so far, and the story's only going to let you get so far, because the game is hard. World of Warcraft is a third-person combat game. You target an enemy in front of you, and you hit them with your basic attacks, and then you also have 50 to 70 abilities, depending on your class. So you can have tons of skill bars, and you have tons of shit to manage, and unless you're using like third-party programs to help you manage your key presses and things like that, which is allowed as long as it doesn't like play for you, the game can be really complicated to manage, because if you're a class that's important to your team, like the healer, if you mispress one button and let somebody die, now everybody in your team hates you.
That's some real emotions get involved in these games. Yeah,
exactly. And then you can feel like you're actually like physically, or well, you could feel like emotionally damaged, because you're like, oh man, I'm letting people down, and now people don't like me, and now my self-esteem is hurt. And it just gets into like a weird, more than parasocial place, because these people aren't just your teammates. They sometimes are playing with you for, if you're like in the game for a long time, 10, 12 hours a day. They're your coworkers, they're your friends. Even more cheesy, sometimes they become your family. And whenever they get mad at you, you're like, fuck, well, now I don't have a tank, because the one guy that I know that can do this raid easily, he's pissed off at me because I said something stupid as a joke, and now we have to hire somebody new, and now we have to either teach them the rotation or hope that they know it, because Johnny's fucking pissed. It just becomes a stupid social game on top of the game that you shouldn't even have to interact with. But the game itself is fantastic. Like you said, it's crack. Even if you just have infinite money and you just have nothing but time to play World of Warcraft, you're sitting doing it all the time. You can get your character up to max level, and then after that, you can get the best gear for that character, And then if you decide, you can make a bunch of new characters because there's a bunch of different races, there's a bunch of different classes.
Different start points. So you almost have to create other characters to see other parts of the game because they start their own world. And
then there's 2 different big factions, so some people can't go into other zones without getting attacked. Or so the game is very, very, very big. And that's because, it's been going on for so long. I started late, and then I only played up until Mist of Pandaria. I stopped before Lords of Draenor, so I don't really know what's been going on in the story for a long time. Even then, I didn't really know what's going on because there's so much. Even if you're just paying attention to the people you're talking to, it's like, okay, hold on, wait a second. So this lady used to be like a queen, and now she's resurrected by a necromancer. Wait, no, he's a Lich King? Okay, so what's a Lich King? Okay, so why does he have a magic sword? So now there's a DLC where I have to go kill him? Wait, hold on, so he's back? Wait, there's a new Lich King? There's so much going on, even if you're just focusing on literally what's just in front of you, which is great. Like, there's so much to WoW. The big problem I have with it is it costs money. It is not a free-to-play game in any sense of the word. You can play to play, which is their model they have in play. If you play the game and you do enough in game, you can spend your gold that you earn in game to buy like time tokens, which you can get yourself membership access by paying in-game gold for real time in membership time, which is great. I guess if you're constantly playing, you're never really having to worry about paying for the subscription fee or whatever. If you don't do that, then it's essentially like $10 a month, even if you pay annually. On top of paying $10 a month just to even log in, they will maybe twice a year release an expansion that's like, hey, here's $40 extra, please. Can you give us this for a new class, new dungeons, new raids, and stuff like that? And if you don't, then you can't play with your friends who did.
It's the FOMO. They tap into FOMO so very well. Yeah.
That's where World of Warcraft starts to lose me. And that's why I never really got into it, is because we were a poor family. And I was like, oh, hey, Mom, it's like $15. And she's like, okay, it's like $15 like once? It's like, no, like every month.
Yeah, like, I know. It's tough.
Wait,
it's
in
tough.
4 months, that's like a new game. And then every 4 months. So do you want this one game forever, or do you want like new stuff like occasionally? It's like, that's a good point. I don't only want one game forever. I think I'm good. It walled me out just because of that, because it wasn't free to play. I played other games, Ragnarok Online or Eve, or, stuff where, you just log in.
Right. It's the number one MMORPG in the world, I believe. So for a reason, but yeah, I have nothing bad to say about it in the sense of like, I get it, but I like you, I can't invest. I don't have the time. There comes a point where, you're almost like, am I doing this? I have to do this. I have to do this. Where again, standalone games, you don't feel obligated to play them. It's to me, it's a little bit more freeing. I hate to say it psychologically, where I don't have to log into Fallout today. It doesn't matter. I can do it 2 months from now. It's always going to be there. Nothing changed. Nothing happens in the world until I log in. I control the events. Wow, it keeps moving without you, and you feel like you're missing out. I'm not criticizing people that play it. My sons play it, but it gets to the point. It can get to the point where you might be sacrificing some real world stuff, so to speak, or other things in your life because the world is moving without you when the real world that you're in is also moving without you. And you kind of have to decide, which one am I going to focus on? Hey, that's my little soapbox. I don't know. It's a dangerous game. There was a website. I don't know if it still exists today, probably. But in the early days, like back with Burning Crusade, in the early days of the game, there was a website called the Widows of Warcraft. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Widows of Warcraft, a real group of women who have lost their husbands to the game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's sad. It really is.
And I actually had a coworker. He was one of them. His wife, and they actually just had a kid together. His wife said to him, I kid you not, family or the game. And he chose the game over his family. That's a real danger. So, I mean, I know this stuff happens. And look, we're humans. We can get addicted to drugs, food, video games, and you got addicted. That's what addiction is. It's not really necessarily how much you do something. It's if you do something, what are the consequences? You do it despite the consequences. So
does your habit start preventing you from doing other things? Then you have an addiction. Then you have an addiction problem. It's not necessarily okay, but you can be neutrally addicted to something. You can be addicted to something and be dependent on it, but also not let it ruin your entire life.
Yeah, if you're still going to work and you're still a good whatever, partner, parent, whatever it is, like sure, we all have things that we enjoy. Good discussion points. All right. Have you ever heard of this one, Annie? Bioshock. If you can believe it, we're going back to 2007. It's a first-person shooter. that left a significant mark on the gaming industry and has often been celebrated as a masterpiece. But does it truly live up to its legendary status? The game certainly delivered on its promise of a dark, intricate narrative set in the eerie underworld city of Rapture. Its storyline is rich and thought-provoking, tackling themes of power, morality, and the breakdown of society, while its world building creates a haunting and unique atmosphere for players to explore. However, the gameplay itself can sometimes feel, again, repetitive. The shooting mechanics lack precision, and the hacky minigame can become tedious. Although innovative, the RPG elements can feel overly complex for some players, adding unnecessary layers to an otherwise streamlined experience. And while the game's moral choices add an interesting dimension, they can feel somewhat blunt and lacking in subtlety. So while Bioshock was groundbreaking for its time, its imperfections today become more noticeable in hindsight. So it feels slightly less than perfect in today's standards. But does Bioshock hold up today? Is it overrated? Is it the great game and series that people talk about?
I think Bioshock has a fantastic story from beginning to end, but as you mentioned, does it hold up? There's a twist that happens near the end of the game that is pretty obvious if you're paying attention, and if you have any clue what's going on. The game is just constantly like slapping you in the face with its, ooh, you don't know what's going on. And it's like, okay, it's pretty obvious that it's blank, and this blank guy is probably the bad guy. The game is, for its time, back in 2007, great. It was a super awesome narrative. It was, you're in an underwater city with a bunch of drugged up people with superpowers that want to kill you just because they're insane. The whole time you're trying to solve this mystery of A, why you're there, and B, what the fuck is happening to all these people. The game is, from the moment you get into it, action-packed and really, really good. It's in the genre, which is what it's called, I believe, an immersive sim. You can kind of approach situations from generally at least 3 different ways. You can go in like guns blazing, you can do the stealth, or you can, and a lot of times, dialogue and try to talk your way through situations. Okay. Less so in Bioshock, because there's not a lot of talking because people are insane, but there is a lot of talking with other people, which is part of the story. You get to know certain characters and build a relationship with them, whether you want to or not. Then the gameplay itself is fantastic because it's a first-person shooter, but you also have what are called plasmids, which are like different genetic superpowers. You got like fireball, you got lightning bolt, you can summon some bees and shoot them at people. You have this one where you can just kind of like force push people. You got one where you can charm enemies. There's a bunch of different cool powers that can change how you decide to play the game. If you're playing on easy, you can just basically walk through the whole game with a wrench. And not a big deal. But on the harder difficulties, some enemies are really freaking tough, and you need to stun them so you can get a couple free hits in them, or you need to charm the strongest enemy and hope the weaker enemies damage him enough so you can kill him. There's a lot of strategy that comes involved in Bioshock and immersive sims in general, which is a big reason that I like the game. It is set in a really, really cool environment. It's like in the 1920s in a underwater Art Deco city, so it's just very vibey. If people were still walking around, they'd be wearing like fedoras and long sundresses, and people would be like, see? It'd be like a gangster city, and it has really cool theming. It uses environmental storytelling very well because there's a lot of people who aren't talking, and you can just see what's going on based on the bloodlines. Like a corpse was dragged from an elevator all the way to like behind a counter, or for vice versa. I guess if you can find the corpse, you can see like somebody pinned up against the wall and somebody threw a bunch of knives at them. There's just a bunch of silly set pieces that don't really tell a story, but I guess if you use your imagination, you can be like, oh, this is probably what happened here. Oh, maybe this is what happened. The Bethesda games do a really good job of that, is their environmental storytelling. You can find all sorts of little Easter eggs and silly little stories. My Twitter banner for years was a skeleton that was down in a subway. Before he died, he decided to just have like a bowl of cereal with his teddy bear. His teddy bear has sunglasses. He's sunglasses and a fedora on. He's got a bottle of milk and then a bowl of cereal with a spoon in it, and then the box of cereal. And he's just sitting here like, life. Oh, and I was like, this isn't part of the game like at all. It's just a skeleton sitting here, but
My story says that he wanted one last bowl of cereal before he died, so that's what he did.
It's not a bad
Maybe
way
he
to
killed
go.
himself. Maybe he died of radiation. Who knows? Who will ever know? But it doesn't matter. And Bioshock does a lot of that. Just, it doesn't say, it shows. That's a really good thing about it. As you mentioned, though, the game's moral choices towards the end are pretty one-dimensional. There is a very clear good ending and a very clear bad ending to the game. And it really depends on what you do with these characters that come up throughout the game. You can either decide to do bad things to them or do good things to them. If you do literally like any of the bad thing, then you get the bad ending. So you just have to go really like a binary choice. Just do all the good choices to get the good ending, or just play however you want and get the bad ending, because whatever, that's the ending you're going to get. It feels very binary, and it kind of takes away from the player choice. It's really nice that it's reinforced in the gameplay itself, letting you kind of do whatever you want.
Whatever one you pick, you could almost just watch the other ending on YouTube. It's an earlier game, so there was like, here's the bad ending, here's the good ending. Okay, cool. Great analysis again. All right, second last one is Half-Life 2. It was hailed as the ultimate first-person shooter upon its release, but it falls short in some key ways, according to people. For one, the pace can be very slow at times. Long sections devoted to exposition and puzzle solving tend to drag, making the game feel like more of a chore than a thrilling adventure. And while a well-crafted story is always appreciated, sometimes you just want the adrenaline rush of fighting enemies and causing mayhem. The biggest letdown, according to some people online, is arguably the ending. After hours of build-up and trudging through a slow-paced narrative, the conclusion feels anticlimactic, leaving many players feeling unfulfilled and questioning the purpose of it all. Without giving anything away, it's safe to say it's not the kind of ending that sticks with you for the right reasons. Still, Half-Life 2 was considered a masterpiece when it came out. While it has its standout moments, the overall experience can feel slow and underwhelming, not quite living up to the hype today.
The only part of Half-Life I've played personally is the beginning of Half-Life 2, not episode 1. To clarify for the audience, there's 3 parts of Half-Life 2. There's Half-Life 2, there's Half-Life 2 episode 1, and there's Half-Life 2 episode 2. I've only played Half-Life 2, the beginning of it. This part where you're seeing right now, where you're walking around in the city with the soldiers and you're in the city, that's basically where it ended. I haven't seen this part at the docks. I haven't seen a ton of this in my own gameplay. I got to the part where you drive the car and I just said, I don't like this. It's too clunky. It's boring. The pacing, as you mentioned, is now screwed up because I'm suddenly just driving in a vehicle that I don't like, and there's no way to bypass this section. At the time, though, it was very innovative. There was a great story. There was tons of different gear. There was a overarching narrative as well. There was then the vehicle combat. You had tons of different enemy variations. So it was a really cool game, and it was innovative for its physics. So you could like pick up objects and you could use the gun to throw them at enemies, or you could physically pick them up and move them to solve puzzles, where if you need to get up into a section, you can move a crate and then jump on the crate and move up that way. For that, it is very, at the time, groundbreaking. But if you go back and play it, if you're not just playing it for like to say you did it or nostalgia, I can imagine it being an unenjoyable experience because it's just old and clunky. But that is the nature of the engine it was made on. It's made on the Source engine. So if you've ever played Gmod, you know kind of exactly what it's going to feel like. It's very clunky. It's very silly, but that's what it is. The story is really good, though. There's a lot of really good characters. It's voice acted pretty well. There's a lot going on. There's some mystery. So in the first part, it's great. And then the episode 1 and 2 kind of wrap up what's happening in that first section. However, it finishes Half-Life 2 as a whole on a cliffhanger. As you mentioned, it can kind of feel anticlimactic because there's not like a big bombastic ending. You just kind of end in a dialogue and then the credits roll. It's still to this day not been a Half-Life 3, and even years later, Valve released a sort of sequel to Half-Life 2 called Half-Life Alyx. However, that game itself is also not Half-Life 3. It takes the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and changes it. So instead of a character ending the game this way, Alyx goes back in time, does some shenanigans, and then changes the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2.
We still don't get any further story after the ending of part 2, though, because Valve doesn't want to do Half-Life 3. I don't know. I don't know what their problem is.
Well, it's not your fault. I'm just like, that's confusing. I don't know why they would do that.
It is confusing.
Okay.
For no reason. That's the reason I think it's got a lot of negative to it. There's so much going on that it's so easy to be like, I'm confused. I have, who's that? What is this? Okay, what? Okay, you assume I know what's going on here, and I have no clue.
All right. Well, something a little bit less confusing is our last one. Super Mario 64. And people are like, oh, how could you put anything Super Mario related on this list? Well, let's be honest. While it was revolutionary as a 3D platformer when it launched, in hindsight, it's often overrated. The game promised an expansive 3D world to explore, but some levels feel dull and repetitive, lacking the excitement we expect from a Mario game. And those camera controls, a real headache. Constantly fighting with the camera can turn gameplay into a frustrating chore. The emphasis on collecting stars and coins also feels like a tactic to artificially stretch playtime rather than offering truly rewarding gameplay. Combined with limited level variety, awkward camera controls, and mechanics that don't always feel inspired, Super Mario 64 sometimes comes off more as a quick cash grab than a polished gaming experience for fans. Now, before you give your thoughts, this is just a 40-second clip, so let's just watch this commercial.
Open your eyes and your mind to the realism of Nintendo 64 as you play Super Mario 64. Submerge in a 3D environment with 15 worlds of beautiful graphics at 10 special areas, and of course, Mario. Move an incredible 360 degrees as you embark on Mario's greatest adventure to recover the stolen Power Stars and defeat his mortal enemy, Bowser. Mario acquires special abilities by changing hats. Fly with a feathered hat. Use the invisible hat to vanish. And become invincible with the metal hat. Use these powers to combat giant 3D enemies as you see the action through Mario's eyes. 64 megs of power and battery backup let you experience Mario like never before. It's Super Mario 64.
That last part was a big deal, where he mentions that there's a battery inside of the game cartridge, which will allow you to actually save your files right onto the game cartridge. The 64, not every game had that capability, and some games had to be saved onto a memory card, which you would plug in externally to the controller, which could be a hassle if you lost your memory card or your memory card got damaged. You being able to save up to 4 files on N64's Super Mario 64 was a big deal, because you could play your file and then also let your siblings or your friends play on your same cartridge, but also not fuck with your file. That aside, the game itself is, as you said, it's revolutionary. It's the first 3D Mario.
This was the first one where we got to see this 360 version, 3D version of this world, right?
Honestly, I have no negatives on the game other than the game can be sometimes hard, but that's kind of the same thing with any Mario game. There's some levels that are just overly hard, and the conditions to beat the game aren't that stringent, so you can kind of beat it even if you're kind of more of a casual player. There's usually 3 to 6 ways to beat most levels, so it's all about collecting as many stars as you can to get like the true ending, but you can beat Bowser kind of at any time, and then you can just explore the castle and do whatever you want. Really nice that it feels like it's open, but also at the same time you kind of have a goal to keep earning towards, because you want 100% every level. You want to get higher in the castle because there are some doors that are locked behind a certain star completion level. So you need to get like 40 stars to get behind this door, or you need this many stars to get into this door, so then you can unlock this. There's a lot going on in the hub world outside of the levels, which I feel like is a really good idea to keep the player invested whenever they're not running around doing Mario stuff, like jumping on Koopas and grabbing power-ups and stuff like that. You can explore the castle, and outside of it, at least when I was a kid, there was so much to do that it really felt like a much bigger game than it was.
Okay. All right. Well, if you can believe it, Annie, we've reached the end of the list. Thank you for your wonderful insights and your background knowledge. You really gave some incredible information, so I really appreciate what you offered. But now comes the, well, maybe not the hard part, but it comes the finale of the show. We are going to pick independent of each other. I do not know your pick. You do not know mine. I'll go first because you're the guest. Everyone's going to want to hear yours over mine. I'm the boring host that's on all the time. So, and you actually changed my mind. I actually had another pick, but this often can happen while we do a show. I'll hear the arguments. I'll hear things about the game or whatever it is. So what we're going to do for this, I think we both agreed before we started the show, the scenario is you've got 10 games. So 10 games are given to you. Let's just say you have to play one game for 1 week for 10 weeks. But then the person says to you, hey, look, I'll do you a favor. There's one game here that you don't have to play. Which one do you take off the list? So they're like, oh, good. I don't have to play that one for a week. The choices are, just to remind our audience, Fortnite, Minecraft, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, Grand Theft Auto 5, The Last of Us, Halo Combat Evolved, World of Warcraft, Bioshock, Half-Life 2, and Super Mario 64. So again, you're saying, hey, you got to play this game for a week, and I want to hear your thoughts on the end of the week, what you thought of the game. And you're like, okay, but good, I don't have to play that one. At least of the 10, there's one I can take off. Now, it was your discussion, the one where you start off really strong, and then you kind of really shat on it at the end, was Halo Combat Evolved. After you're hearing your discussions on it, about why it doesn't hold up and all those things, and then we saw the video of the graphics and the gameplay. Every other game I'd be willing to like investigate, play with, have fun with, or just, The Last of Us is easy because I just get to watch a story at the very least. It sounds like a very engaging story, so that's easy. Like, sure, I'll just watch a story. But according to you, with the Halo combat itself, and you can't really cut any scenes, and the fighting that you do, and yeah, you have to watch the cutscenes, or else you're not going to understand where you are. But even the cutscenes aren't that engaging. The combat's clunky. So I'm thinking to myself, well, of all these games, at least the other ones, even Half-Life 2, some of the criticisms you have with that type of game, I'm like, well, it sounds more interesting at the very least, even though it's complicated. Yeah, so my worst pick, I would take this one off. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine if I never play this game. Halo Combat Evolved. What about you?
Before I answer, have you ever played Halo Combat Evolved?
So when this first came out, yes. I'm not very good at these type of games, but yeah, I played it. I remember when it came out being, wow, this is like revolutionary. Everyone was talking about this. It was a hyped up game. That's why I made the overrated list, right? Because when it came out, even me, a casual gamer of these type of games, I had picked up a controller and played with my buddy just to try it out. It didn't engage me. It's like, I get it. Yeah, these tanks, this world, planet, aliens. I even remember playing it at the time thinking, what's the hype? I remember feeling that way even back then before we did this list. Like, I remember thinking, okay, I get it. I guess it's obviously very popular, but it did not grab me at all, even back then. And I've never investigated the series since.
Well, I think that's a great answer. I think that gives some insight. To answer your question of which one would I take off this list so I wouldn't have to play, honestly, I thought about it a lot, and I think it would have to be Half-Life 2. Any of the 3 episodes, Half-Life, Half-Life 1, Half-Life
Sure.
1, 2, or 2, whatever. I feel like the story is a lot better than the game, and that can be said for a couple of the games on this list. I've never had a huge fascination with the universe. I don't have a big investment in silent characters. At least in Halo, Master Chief does have some dialogue in the cutscenes. He doesn't really talk during the game, but he is a person. He is a character. In Bioshock, your character doesn't talk, but he is a person. He's Jack. He came from somewhere. He has an objective. The reason he doesn't talk much is because he has memory loss. He doesn't know what's going on. In Half-Life 2, I can't really relate to Gordon Freeman because he's just a scientist who just doesn't talk. It's hard for me to put myself in his shoes because I don't know who he is. I can't empathize with him, and it's hard for me to care about the characters on screen other than Alex because all of them just kind of seem one note and boring. And I will give a pass because a lot of it is a product of its time and technical limitations on the engine that they use. But honestly, I would probably give it a pass. I'd rather just watch somebody be like, here's the Half-Life 2 story in 20 minutes. I'm like, cool, thanks.
All right. That's awesome. I love it. I love the reasoning, and very fair. I don't think you're going to get a lot of detractors on that one at all. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, before you go, let people know where they can find you.
On all streaming platforms, my personal channel is @Insanity. So that's INSANNEITY, Insanity. It's a pun on my name and insane. On my personal channel, that's where you can find me. I stream a lot. I'll probably be streaming later today and probably whenever you're watching this. And then my video game review podcast is What's This Game? You can find it on YouTube. You can see it on screen. But for the audio listener, it's What's This Game. Couldn't get it without the hyphens because the people to squat on names on YouTube, I guess. But nonetheless, you can check it out. At the end of this month, we'll be putting out 2 episodes. We'll be doing The Outer Worlds as well as the Dead Space remake from 2023.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, Annie. That was amazing. This was a fun discussion. But remember, in front of every silver lining, there's a cloud. And today for Ryan, it was Halo Combat Evolved, and for Annie, it was Half-Life 2.